After being taken with pick 7 in the 2018 AFL Super Draft, it's been a wild ride for Bailey Smith, a Bulldogs cult figure who claimed during his draft year that alcohol would be something that he would go nowhere near, and then he kind of got himself into trouble with something, let's just say, was not alcohol. He's a marketing icon, basically, of this sport, and that will only continue to grow, but now it looks like he won't be at the Bulldogs in 2025, and there are some natural landing spots for him that I want to talk about in this video, as well as the odds of him staying at the Bulldogs, what he'll add to each of these teams, and where he is most likely to end up come the end of the trade period for the soon-to-be 24-year-old in round 1, 2025. So, in the midst of a reasonably disappointing round 15, let's talk about Bailey Smith. The big Baz Lenker rocking up to the Bulldogs was a big deal, considering that Connor Rozee was already off the board at this point. The King brothers were off the board at this point. The Bulldogs took a chance on their outside midfielder, who quickly became one of the better wingers in the competition. And then when he moved into the midfield semi-full-time, in his career best year, his numbers exploded, and we'll take a look at all of those things in just a moment. But the style of player that he is, it's kind of understandable that the ACL worries are there, considering how much he uses his pace. He wants to get meters gained, and he is definitely a ball in momentum, travelling forward kind of operator. It makes a hell of a lot of sense that not only would he be in demand, but there is some fan pessimism about what he can bring moving forward. But considering his age and the fact that players have recovered from ACLs and still been very good footballers, I feel like this can be put to rest a little bit. It's not as if he is a decrepit footballer in the slightest. It's not as if he is a bad player who's gone down. He is going to be in demand, and it probably could be 2 first-round draft picks for him. One maybe in the top 10, one not so. When you draft a guy with pick 7 who's been as good as he has been and he's on the move, sure, the ACL may have lowered his trade stance at this point, and if he put up numbers that were pretty similar to his last 3 seasons, you could definitely see 2 top 10 picks being the asking price. As maybe as mad or as maybe even as ugly as this sounds, his knee injury actually benefits the team that's picking him up in terms of what they are buying him for, and how his knee recovers is obviously going to be integral to how he performs. But considering that's pretty much the only unknown variable at this point, let's talk about what we and he can control, and that's what he's delivered so far. So coming into the competition in 2019, he put up really good numbers. From your rookies, that's what we want. Considering the way that players post Bailey Smith draft have come in and been able to impact in a meaningful way, these numbers may seem underwhelming to you, but I really hope that's not the case. This is a guy who wasn't playing on a half-back flank, who wasn't taking kickouts. He was still getting a decent amount of contested ball, considering his rate was just under 42%. They're really good numbers to start with, so tick in that regard, and the fact he was still able to work defensively and lay 4 tackles a game shows that he was up for the fight. And then 2020 kicked in, COVID kicked in. How much of a jump could you expect from a young player going into a shortened season? Well, this was a pretty big jump for the Baz Lenker himself, as he absolutely took the piss in a shortened season, racking up pretty good numbers there. Sacrificed some tackles to get himself into the 20s, and considering that 20% of quarters were effectively eliminated from games, if you put an extra 20% in there, you're looking at a guy who would have averaged in a lengthened season 25, upwards of nearly 26 disposals a game. Absolutely huge numbers. So, 2 years in, and he's gone on that rapid ascent, and so did the Bulldogs. Coming off a season in which they made finals, it would be a grand final season for the Doggies. And when Marcus Bontempelli goaled in that third quarter, it looked like a secondary Luke Beveridge-led grand final would be headed to Whitten Oval. Alas, this would not be the case if we've spoken about on this channel quite a few times, but without a doubt, Bailey Smith's season was the best that he had put up so far, with numbers that look like this. 17 goals from a midfielder wingman is absolutely elite, as he was up around that 24 disposal mark, and who can forget that infamous ice in the vein celebration up at the Gabba? Truly iconic. And for those of you that might think that that is cringe or corny or anything like that, get some personality, will you? Enjoy the fact that players can show off, can gloat, can do all these things, right? Kai Lohmann's the same, Tom Papley's the same. We need entertainers. Entertainers can become villains, we know that, but we at least need to enjoy character in the game. We can't demand personality and then not like when personality shows up just because it doesn't align with either the footy team we follow or anything like that. If you didn't enjoy the ice in the vein celebration, unless you're a Brisbane fan, come on. You've got to be able to enjoy those things. And taking inspiration from the NBA, NFL, these kinds of sports, is just how things go. They're global. They're popular. It happens. Let young people express themselves. But ultimately, it would not be premiership glory for Baz Lenker, and in 2022, he would take his game to yet another level. The Bulldogs might have had some serious doubts over them during this season, but as a more midfield time generated player that Bailey Smith became, his numbers went through, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, the fucking roof, as he averaged nearly 30 disposals. His inside 50 numbers are also elite, and nearly 4 clearances a game really does show the way he was able to exit the ball from clearance. Now, if you are a club that's looking to pick him up, and we're going to talk about those clubs in just a minute, it's easy to say that this version of Bailey Smith is the one that you want, and absolutely that would be ideal. We would take those numbers any day of the week. But what's so important about those numbers is not just his ability to get the footy, but the fact that he's driving it in long. 1 in every 5 of his disposals were going inside the forward half. Teams that aren't generating scores in their forward half, or maybe aren't doing as well in the inside 50 metric, are going to be the ones that need him the most. Whether he's putting up these numbers or his 2023 numbers, right, it makes pure sense that you're going to be able to get more guys with ball in hand that want to drive the ball forward. Teams that have got really good ball movement, or teams that are striving for good ball movement. Now, there is an argument to be made, isn't that all of them? But there are some teams in the competition where ball movement is not their weakness, and it's also not a point where they can really go to another level, or they just might have other things to address. Sydney is so good. Yes, Bailey Smith would seem unfair with their salary cap, for example, but you don't look at Sydney's ball movement and go, you know what would make it even better? Bailey Smith, with the quality that they've got. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way whatsoever. You look at a team maybe like North Melbourne, who we haven't even spoken about yet in this regard, would absolutely love him. The fact that they've chased Elliot Yeo, these kinds of players, imagine Luke Davies-Uniacke, Bailey Smith and George Wardlaw as the core of your midfield. Wow, that would be really something. And they're not even the teams that are on the thumbnail that could use Bailey Smith at this point. But what happened to his last season before his ACL? Well, some people might say he got bevoed. He did miss some games here and there for the reasons we've spoken about earlier in this video, as well as your little niggles that you pick up now and then. But he did put up serviceable numbers, but by no means had the midfield-centric season that 2022 popped up. Whilst those numbers still look good, it can't really argue the fact that they aren't near his 2022 numbers. But overall, for his career, he's played 103 games, averaged nearly 23 disposals. If that is your base mark for the next 150 games for his career, at least the next 100, go and get him, which is what clubs will want to do as he recovers from his ACL in Europe. I found it hilarious that they called it a White Lotus vacation, which I think was made by someone who hasn't watched that show before, but alas, we're not here to hang shit on the media. This video would go for about 4.5 more hours. So who could target Bailey Smith in this upcoming trade period, and where are the clubs that could most likely get him on not only the coin, but the marketability? Where are his best fits? Well, as crazy as it sounds, let's start with the reigning premier. Yep, the Pies could really use Bailey Smith. Whilst they've still got the old heads in Scott Pendlebury, you could even call Jack Crisp in that category if you wanted to. Jordan De Goey, Tom Mitchell, yes, they're still around, not going anywhere. Bailey Smith could start on a wing in his career at Collingwood. Still side bottom. There's your age replacement right there. Would add a ton of excitement to Collingwood's ball movement. He's already close with Nick Dacos, as you probably know if you follow any kind of AFL social media. You will know that that is the case, and those two together would make Collingwood even more marketable than they already are. And apart from probably West Coast, or maybe they're 1A and 1B, this is not where I want to have the debate in this video, I should say. But it would make Collingwood unlikably likable, if that makes sense. They would be so good to watch, so fun to watch. Their ball movement would be so good. We would hate ourselves for enjoying watching Collingwood play, which is just nuts. But also what he would add to the Collingwood side is some help. As good as the Pies are going, and look, if they win the flag with these kind of numbers, I'll put my hand up and go, I was wrong. But the way he's able to find the footy, use it, get his meters gained, score, these kinds of things, if he, along with De Goey, Mitchell, and these guys that have got to come back in, can improve these kind of numbers, that would be absolutely extraordinary, considering 11th in inside 50s, 12th in meters gained. He fixes both of those with the way that he plays the game. He's not afraid to win the contested ball, but getting it on the outside and on the ground, 15th and 6th in those regards, is going to be massive for Collingwood's midfield development. 6th for clearances. If he's on the outside of the stoppage, he and Nick Dacos, along with Josh, of course, on the other wing, what a combination that would be from help. Their scoring isn't too bad from stoppage and turnover, top 8 in both of those categories, and depending on how much he would get from centre bounce, could help their scoring. I do also understand that scoring from centre bounce is still about your forwards, and Collingwood need to finally grow some balls and get tall forwards into their lineup. They just do, but we want a flag without them. I know, but you want to win the next flag, and it's still a concern. And if they want to prove me wrong, they absolutely can. Bailey Smith to the Pies would be almost unfair, but that's why it's such a good fit. Let's go to Geelong. 7-0 they started the season, 1-6 since then. So where the hell are they actually at? And looking at their midfield-centric numbers, they're doing fine. In fact, pretty damn fucking well, to be honest. But what is needing to happen at the Cattery is they need mids. And if you're looking at a guy that could come in and help that midfield core immediately, it's Bailey Smith. Even if Mitch Duncan retires, you're not putting him on a wing. You really aren't. Do not put Bailey Smith on the wing, Chris Scott. If you're listening ears on, right here, Chris, right here. Don't put Bailey Smith in the on the wing. Jesus, I stuffed that up. Put him in the midfield. Absolutely. Even with numbers that look like this. 6th in inside 50, 2nd in meters gained, 5th in contested ball. He's definitely going to help the uncontested ball, although that hasn't really been the Cats' style this year at all. 5th from clearances, so being on the outside would still help. They're able to score from their variety of sources, but how long has Tomahawk got left? How long does Jeremy Cameron have left now? No doubt Cameron's got more time than Hawkins does in this regard, so who is he kicking to? But you've also got to think about it. It's not like you would only get Bailey Smith if you're the Cats, and that would stop your whole recruiting drive. He's a piece, but you can still find other pieces and other ways to make this happen. So don't think that it's, well, if they get Smith, they're going to have no one else. That's not really how it works, even if they do have to give up 2 first-round draft picks. It's Geelong. They'll find a way. Trust me, all right? And as he develops with Jack Bowes, Tanner Bruin, these young guys that can work together in this midfield, their back 6, which although they've conceded some massive scores, that will improve as the midfield gets better. Don't think otherwise in the slightest. That forward line needs to be fixed, but if you're looking for a piece in the middle, Bailey Smith is your guy. Add to the fact he'd be the most marketable person in Geelong for quite a little bit, although they haven't really had problems in that department, but he would sweep up that town like a storm. Geelong being outside of Melbourne, though, might be a disadvantage depending on where Bailey wants to go, what kind of impact that he wants to have. He could either be the biggest fish in a medium pond, or he could attempt to be a big fish in a massive pond. And again, that'll come down to his decision, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But you can't deny that Geelong is an elite fit, and the numbers may not show it, but they do need him as well. And look, call it bias, but my boys want him, so let's talk about his fit at the Hawks. So something that I've really been trying to adopt in my videos as of late is that numbers tell a story, not the story. Because if I asked you who's in better form at the moment, Geelong or Hawthorn, you would say Hawthorn, without a shadow of a doubt. And showing you the numbers that I showed you from Geelong, you are going to see Hawthorn's numbers and go, how are they so good at this point in time? Is it all the first 5 weeks were a disaster? Partly. And they've definitely turned things around. But imagine adding Bailey Smith to the form that Hawthorn are in, and they begin to improve these numbers. I mean, yes, they're top 8 in inside 50s, but metres gained is horrible at 15th, 12th in contested ball, 10th in uncontested ball. He'd help with both of those. 5th in ground balls, and they're 1st in ground balls in their forward half, the Hawkers. So, woohoo! 16th in clearances. If he plays in the midfield, hello, there you go. That's helping us, and even around the ground. But scoring from stoppage is still not great. Scoring from turnover is not great. From centre bounce is improving, which is nice. But when you inject Bailey Smith into a team that's already got Will Day in it going beautifully, Jai Newcomb, who's going beautifully, and considering the mosquito fleet up forward that the Hawks are getting, if you told me that you, as a Hawthorn fan, you could have a fit Mitch Lewis and a healthy Bailey Smith and a healthy James Blank, Hawks are top 4 next year. The Hawks are top 4 next year. I'm telling you, if those things happen. Oh, but Daz, what did you do? What did you say about the Crows? If you're still blaming me for that, number one. But number 2, I did revisit that take and dissected the good and bad of it. You can watch that. Please do. Not too many people have, so it'd be great if you could do that, right? But you can't convince me that Bailey Smith is not the perfect fit. Hawthorn could pay him the most, first of all. Wages are going up next year anyway. Throw him 1.25. Throw him 1.3 for the first year. Offer him 6 years. He's going to be 24. He'll be 29 when he comes out of contract. Do that. If the contract's worth it, give him 3 more. Take him to 32. Bing, bang, boom. Hawthorn need to throw the war chest at Bailey Smith. I'll put a poll up on Twitter. Would they rather Bailey Smith or Logan McDonald? Now, personally, I am kind of like this poll is 52-48, around that mark on, yeah, Bailey probably, if Mitch Lewis is fit, of course. And I love Logan McDonald. I love Bailey Smith too. But the idea of Bailey Smith to Hawthorn makes me so excited. And with that mix of boys, the social media, the clout, the marketing, the likability or the unlikability for opposition fans, which you just kind of have to love. Just, please make this happen, Jared Ruffhead and Mark McKenzie. Please? And look, yes, I suppose we should talk about the team he's still actually, well, not playing for, but associated with, that being the Western Bulldogs, who have got a top 2 percentage in the league, I believe, at this time of recording. And whilst, yes, a 24-year-old at the start of next year would be exactly what this rebuilding, retooling, reshifting, whatever the you want to call it, club is going through, I still think it's a fait accompli that he leaves, and I still think the Bulldogs have done a good job in their recruiting space in the drafts the last couple of years, that they could add this kind of talent into the fore, pair some blokes up with Riley Sanders in a post-Tom Liberatore, Adam Treloar world. I still think they need to get Jed Buslinger in there, but their pieces are okay without Bailey Smith at this point, and if you could tell the Bulldogs now, they could get pick, and let's just throw some figures out there, pick 7 and pick 15 for Bailey Smith off an ACL. I think they do that every time. And considering how midfield heavy this draft is, you could go midfielder first, playmaker second. You really could. And that would be a net positive result for the Bulldogs moving forward. So in terms of what percentages, the Bailey Smith 2025 pie chart, if you will, I'm going to look at it this way. I'm still slightly Geelong ahead of Hawthorn 40 to 39%. I am going to throw the Pies in there at 20%, and sure, I'll give the Bulldogs 1% because it would be rude to have them at 0, but I hope it's the Hawks for obvious reasons, but I get if it's not, and I can't wait to see how he goes no matter whose jumper he has on. So that is the end, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Dad's Talks Footy family. We're not at 3K yet. Want to get there as soon as possible. It's been absolutely huge, the support you've been able to give me. Mock draft is coming very, very soon as well. Share this with a footy-loving mate. Get them on board. Hope you had a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you absolute legends very soon.